Man, oh man, did we just watch one of the best games of the year. San Antonio stealing game one on the road against the defending champs, OKC. And through three quarters, the main storyline was what's going on with SGA. So in this video, I want to break down what the Spurs game plan was against SGA to hold him back, and also just dive into one of the most unique defenses in the NBA with the Spurs, and which makes a lot of sense because they have one of the most unique defenders in Wembanyama. So why did SGA have such a bad night? What were the Spurs doing? Well, just look at this picture. You have two guys aggressively sitting in the gaps, making sure he can't go ISO dribble penetration. And look at the Spurs creating a box, elbows and boxes behind SGA, top of the key isolations. So really, what are they willing to live with? They're willing to live with Lu Dort kick out threes, or SGA trying to step back and make these tough shots, which he wasn't able to make, especially in the first half. We don't only have a gap problem if we're OKC, we also have a Wemby problem, which we need to talk about next, because anytime J-Dub or SGA had the ball, well, Wemby was finding himself to the level of the ball. So you can see when J-Dub tries to attack here, isolation, Wemby is sitting at the level of the ball, so any dribble penetration, he can go and help right away. They're leaving Alex Caruso wide open, and we'll get to that in a little bit because, as you know, if you watch the game, well, Caruso threw a little wrinkle into that game plan. But again, watch Wemby here. As soon as SGA gets this ball, what does he do? He immediately drops below the level of the ball so that on the attacks, SGA can't get any further than into Victor Wembanyama. SGA finds Caruso, and like we just mentioned and hinted about, well, Caruso made them pay with a really hot start. Ultimately had 31 points for the game. Now, San Antonio, Sean Sweeney, and staff, they didn't adjust early. We see some adjustments in the second half, and we'll get to that in a little bit to counter this Caruso hot game. But for now, the San Antonio Spurs are going to live with Caruso getting off to a hot start. You can see again on this little zoom dribble handoff action, Wemby in drop coverage, protecting the paint, and Caruso again just testing him at the rim. Has a phenomenal night. 31 points, obviously. And if Caruso can continue to have a game like this, well, this is going to be a really, really interesting series. But back to SGA before we get to any of those counters, because you can see they want to create, OKC does, these empty side isolations. We broke this down in the Cavs Detroit breakdown just yesterday, I think. But what Detroit was able to do, and exactly what San Antonio was able to do on these empty side isolations, is just send over aggressive help, especially with Wemby protecting the basket. He's going to come all the way over to the strong side. They're going to zone up the weak side, these four players along the perimeter. And I don't know if you watched this game, but Hartenstein was subbed out literally in 2 minutes. So OKC, their staff obviously had a game plan to try and spread out Wemby, try and spread out the Spurs, and we'll see the result of that game plan philosophy and how it really didn't prove to be too effective until they made some counters. But just spreading out here allowed three guys to zone up and allowed Wemby to really load up the box against these SGA kind of ISOs. And yes, we've seen SGA make those kind of shots, but with Wemby there all the time, those are going to be hard shots to hit consistently. Even when Wemby's not on the weak side, even when he's on the strong side, you know some coaches will say, don't help off the strong side corner. We don't want to give up these kick out threes. Well, that's not the case for Wemby. He's guarding Caruso, and that's a player they're willing to let shoot. So even strong side, Wemby is protecting the basket against SGA. And then Caruso was obviously making them pay early in this game. We're going to see that weak side load again. You can see Wemby just chilling on the weak side corner here. He's not even guarding Caruso here in semi-transition. He's just guarding the weak side player. He sees SGA going isolation. What does he do? He immediately finds himself to that strong side block because the NBA has a defensive 3 seconds. So you can't just be in the paint. You have to choose a side. Strong side block or empty side block. And it's clear when SGA has the ball, San Antonio wants to flood the strong side, load up the gap, load up the low man so that he can't go isolation. And you can see the swing, the full rotation here by the Spurs, all rotating up, Wemby rotating opposite. Now, if Dort can hit these shots consistently this series, well, it's going to throw a wrinkle into that. But until the others on the OKC prove they can consistently hit threes, we're going to see a similar game plan to what we saw 2 years ago, the Dallas Mavericks institute, where they're just loading up the paint, protecting the paint, and making them prove OKC can beat them through a 7-game series with just their three-point shooting. Now, when Wemby is not in the game, that changes drastically. You can see Cornette's in the game right here, and what do they do immediately? Well, J-Dub just attacks the basket for an easy 2. Interesting to note, well, Wemby did not sit long in this game. I think this is probably the most minutes he's ever played in a single game, regardless of the double OT. But you can see he's already back in the game here in the first quarter. Again, plugging the strong side against Casey Wallace. J-Dub has the ball. Now they swing it to get to SGA. And just look at Wemby just lurking. He sees SGA about to get the ball, and he's just slowly lurking to that strong side block, making sure SGA doesn't have any room to attack the basket and get to the rim. Again, driving into Wemby, has to kick it out, and this time Casey Wallace, over 2 contesting defenders, hits a really tough shot. So they are making San Antonio pay a little bit, especially Caruso, and that time Casey Wallace, but it doesn't hold up for the entire game. So here we go again, end of quarter. We've seen so far through the first quarter, San Antonio really plug and load, but now end of clock situations, end of quarter situations, we're going to see another wrinkle. San Antonio is going to show traps to SGA. So again, they're waiting for a 2-on-1 situation. Well, don't let them just drag out the clock. Let's go send a trap like they did in the Lakers series, these run-up traps. SGA, though, is coming off a series, like we just said, where he was trapped almost every time he had the ball. So he sees it coming. He throws it to a wide-open J-Dub in the corner. Wemby kind of does his Cornette closeout impersonation, which he does a couple times throughout this game. And whether it makes an impact or not, J. Will was unable to make that one fall. But that wasn't the last play of the quarter. We have another attempt here. SGA bringing the ball up, no shot clock, end of quarter situation. What do the Spurs choose to do? Run up, go trap, get the ball out of SGA's hand, make anyone else beat us. They rely now, as Harper denies the throwback to SGA. This is what the Spurs want. They want J-Dub. They want anyone else trying to isolate. J-Dub, also for context, just coming off an injury, right? Just rehabbing. So might be a little hindered here, although he does get the nice little step back, pump fake, get to the foul line here. And SGA got one of those later in the game too. But that's what the Spurs are willing to live with. Nice little opening set here from Coach Dagnall. Little double ball screen, pop and roll. They want to get SGA into maybe a post-up isolation situation, and they're using Caruso as the entry pass guy, hopefully to draw Wemby away from the basket, but Wemby doesn't fall for it. He sags to the level of SGA even off the ball, and he only comes up when Caruso kind of takes a step-in dribble, look at the basket. Now Wemby comes up a little higher. He still feeds the ball to SGA, and immediately look at Wemby raise his hand and drop to the level of SGA. That raised hand is going to be important. We're going to see that again soon, but that forces a full rotation. You can see San Antonio all communicating behind the play, pointing, allowing Wemby to go to that low side of SGA and actually corral and trap him as the Spurs rotate around that trap. Again, Wemby just anchored at the paint. And then we just saw something interesting. Hopefully you noticed it too. What we usually see in these situations, these trap rotations, is the guy who's trapping Wemby should just rotate to the weak side and everyone should rotate up one. But what we see instead is Wemby try and make his way back to Caruso. And so Battle doesn't full rotate. He actually stays home on Casey Wallace, which is an interesting decision. Does that lead us to believe that the Spurs are really identifying Caruso as the guy they, more than anyone else, want to leave open from three and let him take all the attempts he wants? That's what that rotation leads me to believe, but we'll have to see more, especially in game 2, if that holds up. Again here, why did SGA have a bad game? Well, just look at the pictures he sees when he has the ball. Obviously, we got Battle plugging the gap, so we can't go middle too much. And then look at the rim. Like, Wemby isn't even guarding anyone. He's just at the rim lurking. So if you're SGA, you don't really have too many options here with the ball, even if you can get by your man. Look at this. You're probing into Wemby, and you're trying to read the rotations. But again, Caruso does cut here, which drags the help from San Antonio. But again, 3 guys just positioned on the perimeter allows these guys and Harper to zone up that weak side. The swing allows the Spurs to rotate. Although they do attack the long closeout, Wemby's there at the basket. And again, this is kind of like a matchup zone. I mean, they're not playing it fully yet, but you can see in rotation, Wemby's not going to prioritize a matchup. He's going to prioritize the rim. And everyone else is going to prioritize the perimeter and just scramble out and try and get a hand and try and contest these threes. And that's really the game plan in a nutshell for the first half and how they've limited SGA. Again, here, getting the ball to Caruso, getting the ball to SGA, and just watching the aggressiveness of these loads, these gap positioning. You can see Wemby getting ready to rotate out as Battle kind of corral traps it. Anytime SGA is looking to go ISO, especially drive this way, the Spurs are sending help in the opposite way, preparing for like spin backs and counter moves. Battle kind of soft corrals him here. Wemby gets out to a little bit of a stunt just to give him time to reconnect, but he leaves his feet to contest, and then we see a very typical Cornet closeout to force another miss. So again, being aggressive in the gaps, not only loading and plugging, but also sending some traps. Again, we just talked about this. Anytime SGA puts his head down, that backside gap, that blind side gap is coming because SGA, yes, he likes his bumps, he likes his step backs, but he also loves his bump spins. And you can see he's just checking over his eyes to see if he has that option, and he sees clearly that he doesn't. So credit to SGA for not turning the ball over against these blindside traps. He's never spun into it through game 1, and instead he's able to make the pass option here, and then Cason Wallace just unable to make that blindside trap really pay for the Spurs. And honestly, the only guy able to make the San Antonio game plan not go picture perfect is Alex Caruso through the first half with these kind of threes. And again, it's going to be an interesting series if OKC and Caruso can consistently make shots like that from their other key players like Cason Wallace, Dort, Caruso. Another thing, I just want to shout out Battle here and guys like Harper and Castle, like their contested catches on SGA. Like we saw what happens when SGA brings the ball up. They get to load, they get the plug, they get to send Wemby over. So OKC, okay, first thing, let's put SGA off the ball before the defense has time to load up for him. But unfortunately, he's not able to catch an attack because all these catches, even off-ball screens, are being so physically disrupted. You can see the deflection here. So really, it just turns into another isolation in which we can load up, rotate, and plug. And you can see Wemby's actually calling for a scram switch here, a peel switch from Battle onto the corner because Caruso is hitting some. Battle's just not in position to do that, so Wemby has to guard 2 here and gets the contest and forces a miss here by Caruso. Later in the half, we do get to see the proper execution of that peel switch. 2 minutes to go here. OKC down 5. We get the weak side action here. J-Dub attacking off of Chet. And you can see Champagnie kind of peel back to Chet and then see Wemby rotating over from the weak side to protect the basket. And he makes the decision, well, Wemby can handle the ball and Chet rolling. Let me peel off to the shooter because there's no one really there to handle him. And he actually gets the steal. And J-Dub, for all... that guy should be wide open. He was guarded by Wemby, but instead we have the peel switch here because Wemby can just swallow up those rim options and the roll option, and now we get the steal on that kick out. This play, more than anything, cues you in to what San Antonio's goal are in this series. SGA touches the ball, and look at Wemby raise his hand and say, I'm dropping to the paint. As soon as SGA gets the ball, I am dropping to the paint. Everyone else plug the gap. If he gets by you, he's coming to me at the paint. It's almost like anytime SGA touches the ball, they're going to like a semi-zone where they can get Wemby at the basket and everyone else on the perimeter. You can see even Cason Wallace drives that first heavy help from the gap, but he's driving into Wemby, and Wemby can now guard these two players, the dump off and the driver. J-Dub doesn't even go up with it, dribbles it out. And this is really the only chance you're going to get at Wemby getting out of the paint if you can hit a dump off, hit a drive, and then relocate. We'll see that a little bit more in the second half, but that's how you can get Wemby a little bit out of the paint here guarding the ball. And J-Dub tries to get a finish over him, just unable to do it. Easier said than done, obviously. And then another missed three there by OKC. Now we're going end of quarter again. OKC trying to get a 2-for-1. And what are we expecting San Antonio to do in these late quarter situations? Well, send a trap, get the ball out of SGA's hands. They do it again, even leaving J-Dub, allowing a full rotation out of it. Chet gets a three. We see kind of a Cornet closeout here by Wemby. And honestly, this is the first field goal Chet makes in the entire first half. And part of the reason is that, yes, Wemby, yes, the defense and the matchups for the Spurs, but mainly, we talked about it earlier, the game plan was to stretch out San Antonio's defense, and they're loading and collapsing the paint and zoning up the paint. And so they really relied on Chet to space the floor, and he just hasn't gotten a lot of these swing opportunities. He's used to getting a lot of opportunities rolling, being in the dunker spot, but they're just not using him there in the game so far. So his scoring is going to be hindered with this game plan. Again here, 15 seconds on the clock. SGA trying to get the last shot of the quarter, of the half. Again, we're going to soft corral, trap him, get the ball out of his hands, stay connected, don't let him get it back. Let J-Dub go isolation, their second option coming off an injury, unable to get the foul, unable to get the basket there, and the putback by Chet a little too late. So now we're going into the second half, and honestly, this is where things get interesting. This is where you see the chess match of the playoffs. Hey guys, this is the halfway point in the video, and I just wanted to let you know, honestly, I wanted to do a Caruso defensive breakdown today, but overwhelmingly, I put up a poll on Twitter or X, and I asked people what they wanted to see, and without a doubt, they wanted to see the game plan against SGA and more Wemby content. So if you want to be a part of those decisions moving forward, make sure to follow me on X at Mike_Jagaki. Now, let's get back to the breakdowns. But it doesn't start well for OKC. Before we see any adjustments, we see a really blown up play with a hard switch here, and SGA just picks up the ball against that hard switch. Everyone else goes into denial mode, and just a sloppy turnover before we even get to see any key adjustments by OKC. Now we'll get to it though. The first adjustment we're going to see is in those isolation situations. So similar to the first half, we see a step up screen into an empty side isolation. What do we see? As we expect, we see Wemby coming over from the strong side and everyone else loading up those four guys around the perimeter. But instead of staying there and spacing them out, what we're going to see from Lou Dort is a 45 cut, right? And I think it's clear in a couple of clips here that OKC went into halftime talking about cutting those zone up reads. So because Dort cuts, he draws help from Vassell there, I think. And now this is what puts these rotations in a really tough situation, because Cason Wallace fills behind. That's going to bring Castle. That cut draws in a defender, and now Champagnie is going to be left zoning up two guys who are spaced beautifully with that 45 cut, and he really has no chance to guard both those players. So those kick-out threes are going to be a lot more open by engaging that cutter and really sucking in one defender from those three zoned up. Another thing we're going to see, and I think this is just something OKC and the Thunder stumbled into, but I would love to see a lot more of it. Whoever Wemby's main matchup is, Cason Wallace right here, let's have him be the ball handler, and let's set one of the lowest ball screens you've ever seen in the NBA, maybe even since Rajon Rondo was point guard. We saw a couple of it when he was point guard, but again, driving and just setting a ball screen in the middle of the paint. Beautiful finish there. So something I would like to see maybe a little bit more in game two. We see an isolation, this time not an empty side isolation, but we can see Wemby on the strong side corner guarding J-Dub. And honestly, this is something, if you go to the Cavs game, they did on purpose, right? They always put Mitchell in the strong side corner when Harden was isolating because they wanted Asar Thompson right here. But the problem is, if you drive baseline, well, you're driving into Asar Thompson, or in this case, Wembanyama, where now he's able to make plays, swallow you up, get out to shooters, the whole ordeal, right? So we don't want to do that. What the Cavs were able to do against Detroit is drive middle with Asar Thompson on the strong side and now completely like eliminate Asar Thompson from the rotations and a defensive assignment, play 4-on-4 without their best defender. Now, OKC doesn't get a middle penetration here, but something to think about if you're Coach Dagnall and staff and how to maybe keep Wemby a little bit more out of the play here. Instead, he gets a nice contest plug in that strong side corner. Another option we have using this same approach is driving at Wemby to engage him, kicking it out if you're SGA, and then watch Dort here dribble up, pass, and what do the Spurs do? What they do all the time. They rotate on their perimeter to keep Wemby at the rim, and so who is Wemby left guarding? Well, in a drive kick situation and relocate, he's left guarding SGA because he just took him coming to the rim. So the more SGA can drive, kick, get off it, relocate, we're going to see Wemby actually match up against SGA and leave him open in this case for a wide open three. So that's something I would expect maybe OKC to see in film study and maybe organize and orchestrate a little bit more, because we'll see another clip of it too. Anytime SGA can get by his man, engage Wemby, pass it, give it up, relocate, that's going to be when he's most open. In this case, we don't really see that because Casey Wallace just tries to drive Wemby one-on-one. And then eventually it gets to SGA late clock. And what are the Spurs looking to do late clock? Well, just watch their coaching staff yelling it, right? Let's go trap. Get the ball out of SGA's hands. We don't want him to hit a late clock shot or make anything happen. Let's contest. Let's get the ball out of his hands. Chet unable to make the three go. So again, same thing here, a little bit more aggressive on SGA. Even when he gets the ball, we're still loading up aggressively. You can see he's going to get the ball here. And just watch the Spurs form that wall, form that box behind SGA again on these top of the key isolations. Just there's really nowhere to go if you're SGA unless you're going to kick it out for threes. And McCain, one of the best players you can have spacing away from you, especially you can see OKC clearing out and wheeling this corner to really put this gap defender in a tough situation because there's no one to really help. So if SGA could complete this clean pass to McCain, maybe that's why he's going to be so crucial in this series. Anyone that can hit a three is going to be crucial against this kind of defense if they can get them open and get them passes. Now, notice Caruso is in the game right now, fourth quarter. He's been killing Wemby because of his pop threat. He's been hot from three. So what's the first adjustment the Spurs go to counter this Wemby-Caruso matchup? Well, they're almost going to install a matchup zone type principle. So you can see Wemby initially matched up on Caruso, but as soon as the play starts to get some momentum, he's going to switch and get low. Anytime we're in the half court, Wemby is going to be trying his hardest to get to the opposite low man so that he's always that first rotator at the basket. This is actually something we saw a long time ago with Ayton on the Suns, running into like a matchup zone to really keep Ayton, or in this case Wemby, always opposite the ball, protecting the rim. And you can see him again doing it here. Doesn't really matter who he's guarding. He's just trying to get to that opposite low spot. And then Casey Wallace just trying to make too much happen here at the end of a shot clock. Turns the ball over into Harper. Another counter we're going to see OKC have success with is not a 45 cut, but a baseline cut. So a lot of action here, that kind of double snap ball screen they've been running. Now SGA gets the ball in his hands. Nice little drive, kick, and respace. Again, when is SGA going to be most open? On these respace opportunities, because Wemby's technically going to be matched up with him on that small instance. But they don't find him here. Instead, they're going to find a cutter because SGA's gravity is so hard. We have guys peeling back to him, loses sight here, and we just get Dort cutting behind. And that's another way to counter Wemby's weak side help, right? The moment he steps, especially on a middle drive, Well, this guy's going to be kind of left out to drive on those middle drives. He should be rotating, but he's usually not. And so that cut by Dort is wide open for the finish. So great adjustment by the Spurs to keep Wemby always low side, right? To keep him out of those top of the key threes Caruso has been killing him with. But a nice little counter there by OKC with those baseline cuts. Again, we have a clear out isolation, but no one cuts here for OKC, and that allows Wemby just to swallow it up and actually block SGA's signature step back move there. So incredible block, but again, no one cutting and nothing really productive coming out of it. This time, SGA again getting a clear side isolation, and Wemby's going to stay there on the strong block and even come try and trap him. And to me, honestly, this is the first time in the game I thought OKC maybe had a shot at winning it, when SGA made the decision and Coach Dagnall is going to call some plays in a row to just attack Wemby downhill. So SGA sees Wemby coming up to trap him. Well, can we just beat him in a foot race? And SGA is able to do so. Now we go later in the game. The Spurs have a 4-point cushion, so they kind of get out of that matchup zone scheme and just go back to typical matchups. Wemby on Caruso, everyone matched up. And what does OKC do? They involve Wemby in ball screens. They are allowing SGA to really attack him downhill like we just saw him in the trap. And SGA, again, attacks Wemby head-on, downhill, is able to create contact. And against shot blockers, right? Shot blockers love to zone up. If you can create contact, that throws off their jump, that creates separation, and that's why SGA is able to get this shot to get off. And I love the idea of attacking Wemby head-on with SGA if you can get SGA attacking him downhill in these pick-and-roll situations. This time, obviously, Wemby in a drop coverage. He just sees the two committed, hits Caruso, who's been just on fire all night and continues to be so for a lead with less than 2 minutes to go for OKC. But that lead doesn't hold, and now OKC finds themselves down 2-for-1 situation, timeout called by Dagnall to ensure that the 2-for-1 situation is taken advantage of. And this is the most important thing to realize. This is like really late game chess match. Wemby is guarding Caruso, the inbounder. And so that means that if OKC can attack quickly, well, Wemby's guarding the inbounder, and although he wasn't hugged up trying to get a deflection, which might have been interesting, if SGA attacks quickly, which he does with that inside pivot rip, well, Wemby's out of the play, and he actually gets to the foul line to tie the game up. Fast forward to the next timeout, sideline out of bounds. You notice Wemby's not on ball, and this clip's a little cut off, but on the broadcast, Wemby actually came out guarding Caruso, but then the coaching staff was yelling, just guard the guy opposite corner, right? Just keep Wemby opposite corner, just like they did to open up the second half with their game plan, because in this case, even if Chet comes off these double screens or whatever, the Spurs can just switch out and keep Wemby at the basket. The other thing that is cut off in this clip is leaving the timeout. Wemby and Sean Sweeney were having a very intentional discussion clarifying. Wemby wanted to clarify, we're staying home on shooters, and Sean Sweeney said yes. So you can see actually Sean Sweeney's going to yell at Wemby here to stay home, I assume, because everyone on the Spurs are staying home, hugged up on the three-point line, because honestly, you're up 2. The only thing that's going to beat you with few seconds to go is a 3, and the Spurs are electing that they rather go to overtime than give up a 3 with a chance to lose the game. And so we're relying on Castle versus SGA, and SGA gets to finish the go. Wemby gets blocked on the other side, so we're headed to overtime, and not much changes in overtime. We're just going to see a couple continuations of the same coverage, which with a little bit of some wrinkles thrown in. But again, SGA has the ball. Spurs immediately go to the box and elbow formation. We have cutters, but they stay there. They stay put. Wemby's even communicating to go to the weak side, keep him at the rim. SGA trying to get some space. And honestly, if you're SGA, the only thing you have left is this kind of step back 3, and he actually airballs it with a great contest by Harper, and then Caruso turns this ball over, not realizing kind of that it's a non-reset shot clock. impressive or maybe confusing things for San Antonio is that they didn't overreact to Caruso's hot game. They are relying on regression to the mean to take its effect. But you can see Wemby not guarding Caruso. He's guarding opposite low man. But when SGA attacks right here, you can see they're coming from the blind side to trap him. But, SGA finds the open man from that blind side trap, blind side following Caruso. And for the first time, it feels like in this game, in that situation, Caruso unable to make this shot go, but over the back, or a foul called on Wemby. And so we go into this next play here. And who else but none the other but Caruso on this quick attack by SGA finds Caruso in the corner and makes them pay for sagging off him to cut this lead to 1. Now, if you're the Spurs, you just kind of rotated off of Caruso for that blindside trap. He missed the 3, but then he hit another 3. So you can see there's a tendency probably for the Spurs to stay more at home in these late game situations. We can see the switch here, and this time Castle elects not to follow suit with SGA, and you can see SGA finally get into his bag with that bump spin that he's probably been waiting all game to have the space to do, because he can finally get to the middle of the floor. And if SGA can get to a middle penetration, that's going to make his reads a lot easier, because now he can really size up Wemby's weak side position with a clean passing lane to a shooter, or if Wemby does not commit, he can then go attack the basket. You can see Wemby kind of tries to guard 2, and SGA just slams it down. So finally, that middle penetration bump spin back was available, and you can see the result. So whether or not Castle should have came, I'm sure that's something San Antonio will discuss in that film room. To me, though, this game felt like OKC had it so many chances, and I'm not even going to talk about the transition 3 from Isaiah. Instead, I'm going to talk about this shot as one of the worst shot selections in the entire game. J-Dub coming off SGA's brush screen, something they usually run to get SGA a touch to get a top of the key isolation late clock. Instead, J-Dub tries to be a hero ball here. And listen, huge fan of his game. He's just coming back from injury. And honestly, a chance to really send a dagger in this game. Up 3, make it a 2-possession game. And this is the shot he takes. Doesn't even hit rim. And at this point, the game felt a little bit off balance. And then Wemby obviously comes up and hits a Steph Curry 3 to tie it up. And now we're in a whole different situation. So OKC had 2 chances. Ended up taking a transition 3, which missed, and then that hero ball shot that also missed. So now we're sideline out of bounds. And where's Wemby? Not guarding Caruso again out of bounds, but guarding that weak side player, so he's there to protect the rim and switch anything coming to the ball. OKC is going to get SGA involved, but it's going to milk some clock here to limit the time the Spurs have on a make or a miss. Finally, we get SGA the ball with a down screen pop out. You can see we're coming from the blind side as Harper. We're stunting and staying on Caruso. Wemby's coming over to help. And for the first time all game, OKC actually has Chet in the dunker spot. And what this does is cause Castle to rotate to Chet, help the helper, right? Wemby leaves, we help the helper. But that's going to leave a wide open J-Dub on the perimeter with a chance to really win the game. And he just misses it there. But I would expect in Game 2 to see a lot more of Chet in the dunker spot. I know that naturally puts Wemby maybe in position if that's a matchup they're going to do because Chet's living around the basket. But honestly, with that matchup zone principle the Spurs have been deploying, Wemby's at the basket already, and that dunker spot position, I mean, you might even have a chance to lob it to Chet, but obviously there's no real room here with these 4 hands all over SGA's passing vision. But this just opens up that weak side a lot more with Castle having to decide not on just 2 shooters out here, but a dump off and a kick out 3 opportunity. So unable to go. So what's that mean? We're going to double OT. And again, Wemby just anchoring the paint, boxes an elbow against SGA's. And then you can see Wemby hardly even moves in this play, and everyone just kind of rotates around him. Chet takes this shot, but I just want to freeze it to Harp, to continue to harp on this point. who's open right now? When SGA drives, kicks, and respace, that's when SGA is most open because Wemby's on him. That's his primary matchup in those rotations, especially as the Spurs kind of peel switch and scramble out and X out. Wemby's going to be on SGA, so if we can get this ball with a swing back to SGA, now the game becomes really interesting. Instead, Chet takes this shot and unable to make it go down. But if you're SGA, hopefully we're looking at that going into game 2. And also, the only way to beat this boxes and elbows if you can get straight line drives. And honestly, SGA is the one player in certain matchups that can probably make that happen to avoid the help. But he's still going to have to be faced with Wemby at the rim unless they can find a way to confuse the defense enough to lift him up. But that doesn't seem like the case with these matchup zone principles that the Spurs are using to put him at the rim. Just want to finish out the game here, up 2 possessions if you're the Spurs, so you get some free traps on SGA just to get the ball out of his hands. Cason Wallace does make him pay with this 3 to make the game closer, but again, San Antonio holds on to a 2-possession lead, and to me, this was really the dagger stop. I know there's 2 minutes here, so plenty of time, but SGA just turns the ball over here. With the deflection from Harper. Huge deflection, huge steal against Chet's cut. Even if Chet catches this, Wemby's on him. So just kind of like a sloppy pass, deflected. And to me, that was really the turning point, really the game. I know it's still a 2-possession game under a minute, so we still get to see some more basketball, some important basketball. SGA driving, Wemby still plugging the gap against Caruso, able to get there to contest. And for the first time, most of this game, Wemby's not the one protecting the basket, but everyone else in the Spurs just swarming, and they're so good at walling up and protecting the basket as larger guards. And so that's something that doesn't get talked about as much. Wemby's great, but you got guys like Vassell, Castle, Champagny, these other guards that are still really good at walling up the paint as well. End of clock here. Wemby is guarding the inbounder, but he doesn't make the same mistake twice like he did against Caruso when SGA went ISO and drove it. Instead, he rotates completely and gets this beautiful block to seal the game for the Spurs. So, really interesting game so far. We obviously looked at some adjustments the OKC Thunder might be looking to deploy against the Spurs, but overall we have 2 elite defensive teams battling it out. The matchup we've all been waiting for all season long, conference finals, and we have another conference finals that's looking really interesting on the other end in the Eastern Conference with the Knicks and the Cavs. So make sure to subscribe because we have breakdowns coming all playoff long, and I've even been asked to do a live stream, so we might see that in an upcoming game to talk about these games in real time and the adjustments happening on the fly. So make sure to subscribe, maybe even hit those notifications to stay up to date on anything new coming your way. As always, I'm Coach Mike with Lockdown Defense. Keep up the hard work.